Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and The Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And let me just say, a happy, premature League New Year to everybody who observes. The League New Year officially starts at 3 p.m. Central Time today, so that is when these new contracts are officially allowed to become official, so we're 4 hours away, but Happy New Year, everybody.
I don't know what music is supposed to play.
That was nice. Yeah.
Better than my DIY breaking news sounder.
The breaking news sounder was great.
I don't know. D-Mase sounds. He's got some pipes.
Nah, I ain't got no.
That's the official League New Year
that's the official
theme
League
song.
New Year from here on out. That's the. And y'all can add extra things to it, but that's just like the bass line. Then y'all can throw anything.
We'll be in the lab.
Yeah.
We'll send it to our little music department to dub that and everything.
We'd appreciate that. All right, we'll catch up with Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow in 1 hour. We'll get Hutton's reactions to the moves that the Titans have made, some rumors that are swirling around the Tennessee Titans. Catch up with Hutton in an hour. The Predators are in action tonight on the road, taking on the very, very good Winnipeg Jets, the red-hot Winnipeg Jets. Puck drop at 6:30. We'll have all of your coverage starting right here on 102.5 and 106.3, The Game, for all your pre-game conversation. Willy D will join us later on in the show from Winnipeg, but D-Mase is here with his pipes, his lovely, lovely singing voice.
Absolutely.
How are we doing today, D-Mase?
Hey, I'm doing well. Weather's great. Free agency is going... it's a frenzy, and you seeing guys move to places and teams trade away guys. It's what you want to see during free agency. Teams have been overly active. Some teams haven't been active at all. Dallas Cowboys, and there are some teams that are in the middle. Tennessee Titans that have been active, and I believe will continue to be active as free agency continues to happen. And it's not just this wave of free agency, it's free agency all the way up until June 1st. Now, Titan fans don't want to wait that long, June 1st, but they can, acquire players, up until that point, but even past that point. But June 1st, you're going to see a few more guys, like notable guys, get cut, I believe. And then you got to start the process all over again. How do you evaluate those guys? Do you want them to bring them in? Do you bring them in for a meeting? And then ultimately, do you try to sign those guys that are June 1st? But before that, they've been average, as far as their involvement in free agency up until this point. Now, free agency doesn't officially start for another couple hours, so they still have an opportunity to make some moves, and because there are a lot of guys still out there, not top line guys, but there are still guys out there that can help your ball club win.
There's some big names.
Yeah.
Eric Armstead, Calvin Ridley, and you mentioned some visits. The Titans reportedly have 2 visits set up, and that is where I want to start today, is the most recent moves that the Titans have made since we got off the air yesterday. So we can recap from the beginning. Initially signing Tony Pollard to a 3-year deal worth up to $24 million. I find it a little bit telling that we still have yet to hear the guaranteed money and the true contract breakdown for Tony Pollard. Usually when it's not released pretty soon, it means that the agent doesn't want it to get out, which means that the numbers might not be overly favorable for Tony Pollard. But if they're not overly favorable for Tony Pollard, that means they are probably a team-friendly deal, more friendly for the Tennessee Titans. But at least the numbers that we do know, 3 years, $24 million. Not sure what the actual numbers and guarantees are on that one. Of course, Lloyd Cushenberry, center from the Denver Broncos, 4 years, $50 million. Chidobe Awuzie, 3 years, just shy of $22 million. That's, of course, up to $22 million, not in guarantees. They signed Kenneth Murray yesterday, and yesterday evening, it was reported that the Titans agreed to terms 1 year, $2.5 million deal with offensive lineman Sadiq Charles from the Washington Commanders. So I covered Sadiq Charles in college, so now the Titans have two fifths of that LSU 2019 national championship team offensive line. But this was a move that I was frankly very shocked about, D-Mase. Because I truly don't know what Sadiq Charles gives you. I mean, he
gives you depth.
His PFF grade is 55. Not great. He hasn't played a full season in all of his 4 years in the NFL. He's been injury-ridden. He dealt with a calf injury last season that left him out several games. He dealt with a knee injury in 2022. I think he was dealing with a concussion at one point, if not in 2022, then last season. And also, he's played on the left side his entire career. He was a left tackle in college. He's been a left guard for the Washington Commanders. I don't think that you're going to put him in at left tackle because he's been an NFL career guard, and you have a left guard. It's like you have some depth on the offensive line. Dylan Radins, I think, should be a depth piece. Jalen Duncan, I think, should be a depth piece. Those aren't going to be your starters. I'm puzzled by this one, D-Mase.
Yeah, I see it as just, and again, he's young, 24 years old, 25.
He is young.
I think he may be 25 this season as the season goes on. So he's a young offensive lineman. You pair him, because I think a lot of this, do they plan on him being a starter? Probably not. But what is it that the Titans don't have other than, they don't have backup players. They don't have depth at positions of need. They don't have depth at the offensive line position. Depth.
Starters.
Yeah, they need starters, but I'm saying they need depth as well.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to, from the offensive line standpoint, you get a guy like Sadiq Charles that's still young. You figure he works with Bill Callahan, and he gets better. Do you project him as a starter? Probably not. But if he earns that starting position, that's a plus. But if he doesn't, he's a depth piece. And then now you can go Dylan Radins at guard. You hope that bringing Bill Callahan again, that Dylan Radins will get better. He showed a little promise. He's not a tackle. By no means is he a left tackle. He could probably work at right tackle, but more than likely his best position is the guard position. So you allow Bill Callahan to work with him. You allow him to work with Sadiq Charles. You allow him to work with Nicholas. And hopefully by him being there, because last year, to me, it was a wash with the offensive line as far as what they were. Were they progressing?
No.
Were they improving?
No.
It was a wash. So you bring in, matter of fact, it wasn't a wash. It was just downright bad. But I'm looking at it from the coaching standpoint. That was just a lost year for those offensive linemen because it seems like they didn't get the coaching that they need to get better. Now you bring Bill Callahan in, and you're betting that he's going to get more out of them than the last coaching staff. Now, what that more is, we don't know.
Right.
But even if it's a little bit better, it's better than last year. You
hope. And the one thing that gives me at least the teeniest, tiniest shred of optimism and the tiniest silver lining of this dark cloud is Bill Callahan. And it's not just his coaching, but it's also the evaluation as well. That I would hope whenever Rand Carthon is making these moves, he at least communicates with Bill Callahan. What do you see? What do you like? What can you work with? The evaluation, I think, is key. Because I think one thing that's really important to remember and to keep in mind is that Bill Callahan is an excellent coach, but he is not a miracle worker. He is a great coach, but he is not a magician. That he cannot just wave his offensive line wand and all of a sudden turn Andre Dillard into an elite left tackle. You can only coach up a player so much. He still needs talent to work with. I mean, Jalen Duncan, if he turns into your starting right tackle of the future, then great, wonderful. But I can't rely on Jalen Duncan on turning into your right tackle of the future.
No.
Can he be a depth piece and a backup swing tackle? Sure. And if that's where he's best fit, then that's where he needs to be. But keep that in mind whenever the Titans go throughout free agency and the draft. You cannot make lemonade out of lemons with every single player. Can you make a player better with good coaching? Sure. But how much better can you make players that aren't starters in the NFL? Can you really turn them into starters in the NFL?
Well, I think you can. I think you can turn
But
a
how
player.
much can you rely on that? Like Andre Dillard, I have zero hope of
Well,
him
no,
turning
Andre
into a starting
Dillard,
tackle
he's
in the
shown
NFL.
that he's not a starter. He's shown that he's not a starter. We've seen it up close.
Yeah.
That he's not capable. If you have him at your left tackle position or right tackle position as a starter, then boy, oh boy, hold your breath, because don't hold your breath, because it's not going to be good on that side, whichever side he plays on. But you can get a guy that hasn't been a starter, and he can turn into a starter in the National Football League. It's all about, is the talent there? Do you put these guys in position to succeed? How is the blocking scheme going to be for the Tennessee Titans this year compared to last year? You figure it's going to be a lot different. You figure these guys are going to be coached up well, because Bill Callahan is one of the best, if not the best, offensive line coach in football today. So you figure these guys, if they listen, if they got talent, they're going to get better. Now, how much better? We don't know. But they're trying to add depth to this offensive line, and they're trying to add quality depth. Now, whether Sadiq Charles is quality depth or not, we will find out very, very, very soon here once camp and everything else starts to get going. But what we do know is he didn't grade out well with the Washington Commanders. But I would beg to say, how many people graded out well with the Washington Commanders? You know, it's neither here nor there. But this is another opportunity for him, being coached by one of the best, to become the player that he envisions himself to be, a much better player. He's a guard.
He's a guard.
So they need the depth, because Brunskill, he is a free agent, I believe, or does he have one more year?
He may have one more year.
If they signed him one, but he's coming off of an injury, so you got to deal with that. So you want to have that depth piece. You plan on having Brunskill back to be the starter. If he's not, or if it takes him a little bit of time, then you have a backup in Sadiq Charles.
And you need depth. You need backups. And if Sadiq Charles turns into, a legitimate starting guard in the league, then great. It's just incredibly underwhelming to me when the Titans have as much cash to spend as they have, when the Titans have as many holes as they have, when Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon both touched on at the Combine how much they have to work with in terms of cash and how many holes they need to address. And when Brian Callahan told us that they plan to be really aggressive in free agency, and they come out with a guard who's struggled to stay healthy. And I know that they signed Lloyd Cushenberry, and I'm excited about that move. And they signed Jadobi Wuzie, and I think that's a good move. But with all of the resources that you have, the cash that you have to spend, and all of the needs that you have, to me, D-Mase, this is an incredibly underwhelming group so far. And I know that we still have a lot of time left in free agency. I know that there are going to be needs that are going to be addressed in the draft, that have to be addressed in the draft. I understand that it's early. But we all know that the best players come off the board within the first few days of free agency. I don't want to be left with players that are backups or have serious character concerns or injury concerns. This team just has far too many needs. And one of the biggest and most glaring need is just a need for good players. You have money to spend on good players. And the best you could come up with is Sadiq Charles?
Well, I mean, listen, the players got to want to come here now. Let's not get it twisted. The players got to want to come here. There's, teams offered me contracts. I chose to go to another place. Players, even though you may offer them a contract, teams may choose to go to another direction. They could have spoken with all of these guys or at least a handful of these guys that signed at other places. They could have had conversations with their agents, but they chose to go somewhere else. Rand can only do so much. Organizations can only do so much. You don't want to extremely overpay for an individual and then it not work out. What you want to do is assess assess the market, know your needs, and then base it upon that. They're not trying to build Rome in a day. They're not. They're trying to build this thing for the future. And Rand, they've said this. Like, we got money to spend, but we're not going to all spend it in one day. We got to take our time because the decisions we make will affect what we can do or what we can or cannot do in the future. So I see all these people around here signing contracts and everything else, but let's just wait. Let's just wait and see how it pans out for all of these people that are signing these guys to big deals. Because one thing I know about this league, having played in it, just because you sign a big contract doesn't mean you're going to be worth that contract. Let it play out. Listen, whether Rand's, my thing is, I'm not going to say whether this is a good offseason or bad offseason. Let's determine that come August, September, October, November. If those guys are competing, if those guys are contributing and they're contributing in a positive way, then it was a good free agency.
Yeah.
If they haven't, then we got to go to the drawing board and we got to call Rand to the table. Like, listen, these guys that y'all brought in, they hadn't worked out. But we can't say that now because Houston's going to get all these players. Houston's in a different situation. They are trying to do it now because of what their quarterback has shown them. Their quarterback has shown them we can go. They got their receivers. They got them a running back. Their defense was good last year. Their defense is going to be good this year. They didn't do anything but swap guys out on defense. Everybody's screaming about, them getting, Danielle or
Danielle Hunter?
Yeah, Danielle Hunter. I don't want to say Danielle. Danielle Hunter. Everybody's screaming about them getting Danielle Hunter. Well, they lost a really good pass rusher, so they had to replace it. Mm-hmm. It's not like they kept their pass rusher from last year and then added him. That would have been something, because if that was the case, had they kept their pass rusher from last year, they wouldn't have been able to sign Hunter. They wouldn't have.
Which pass rusher?
One of their pass rushers went to Minnesota, and I forget which one. One of their good pass rushers, I believe, went to Minnesota. So they did nothing but swap, basically, pass rushers.
I can't keep track of some of these.
Yeah, so many things happened. They did nothing but swap pass rushers. That's all they did. They may have gotten better. I don't know, but they were getting production out of that guy. He wanted to sign. They didn't want to sign him, so he went somewhere else. They didn't think he ended up going to Minnesota. Then they end up signing because Minnesota didn't want to pay the money to Hunter, so they end up signing Hunter. So they didn't do anything but swap pass rushers. Now, did they get better? I don't know. They got Danico Autry. I think that's a plus. But let this thing play out before we start, watching everybody else's pockets. That's one thing, as a player, don't pocket watch somebody else. You do your job. Concentrate on your team and your needs and what you can go get. Don't concentrate on what, Houston just went out of gas. Well, we need to go pay this guy. You can't operate from a GM standpoint in that manner.
You're not going to sign a player just to respond to what your divisional rival may have done.
That's what I'm saying. You gotta.
But I do think that it's fair for fans to look at it like,
if you base it upon the fans, your ass is gonna be fired. If you base it upon the fans, your ass is going to be fired within 2 or 3 weeks. 2 or 3 years.
I understand that.
So you can't do that.
You're also going to be fired if you don't address the needs that you need in free agency.
Absolutely.
And look, I understand that there is time. I get it. I know. I understand that free agency starts today. The new league year is today. I understand that you don't need to sign your entire roster all in one day, that you don't need to spend your money all in one day. But I just look at it and I think, what are you waiting on? What are you waiting for? Because we talk about, Houston's in a different position than the Titans are. I understand that. I mean, the Texans played in the divisional round of the playoffs last year. But how did Houston get there? The quarterback is a massive part of that. Having 2 top 3 picks in the NFL draft last year and getting your future quarterback and Will Anderson, that's a massive part of that. I understand that. But C.J. Stroud also walked into a pretty darn good situation on the offensive line. He had great pass catchers because the Texans, the couple of years before they got C.J. Stroud, they were fairly aggressive in free agency.
But
I understand that Rome's not built in a day. But to say that, we don't have to go after these guys because you're not contenders. Well, is it just the only teams that are competing for a Super Bowl this year? They are the only ones that can go out and sign good players?
No, it's not that. What I'm saying is this. You can't, as you're building your team, you can't try to make moves because other teams are making moves. You got to you got to assess your roster.
You have to make moves because you need players.
Absolutely. So, which means you got to assess your roster, assess free agency, which direction are you going, and then base it according to that. They didn't jump out there and start signing. They could have went out there and signed guys to massive contracts and been stuck with those contracts if it didn't work out. But that's not the way they're going. They are going the route of they're building this team slowly. They're building it with the right kind of players, the right type of guys, the character guys. They're building this thing in a way where it's going to last. They don't want a 1 year and then you're gone. We've seen teams do it. Hell, and I know the Rams did it. And they got a Super Bowl, but what happened to them right after? Now they're trying to rebuild that team up slowly because they got exactly what they wanted.
They were a playoff team this past year.
Yeah, but they're still building that team up, and they're going to have to build it up. Once the quarterback leaves, they're going to have to retool that thing again. Why? Because they're not going to have their quarterback. Right now, they're sitting pretty because they got Matthew Stafford right now, and Matthew Stafford is a damn good quarterback. But when Matthew Stafford retires or when he chooses to leave the game, they're going to have to retool again, or either luck into finding a really good quarterback. Houston Texans, let's go to the Houston Texans. Everybody sees, and I understand how this league is, but everybody sees the Houston Texans as the worst team in the league last year, and then the best team in the worst team in the league last year, best team in the AFC South. Mm-hmm. Well, it took them 3 years to build that. It took them 3 years. We don't notice it. Why? Because we ain't following them. It took them years to build up. They finally got their quarterback, and they got their rush in.
It took them years to build it up, but years of being fairly aggressive and spending a lot of money in free agency.
But was it working? Because a lot of those guys got cut.
They didn't have a quarterback.
Yeah, but a lot of those guys got cut. They built it through the draft with Nico Collins, with Tank Dell,
yeah, and I love
with the
those
edge
receivers.
rusher. They built it through the draft, and then they supplemented some of that through free agency. But it took them years to do that. It wasn't overnight.
And I'm not asking for it to be overnight.
But I think that's what everybody's asking for, this overnight thing.
If you wait around,
they're not waiting.
And let players come to you, you're not going to. Then what's the point of having all of the cash to spend?
How do we know that, again, you can go out and get a player? Prime example, the Baltimore Ravens went out and got Terrell Owens. What did Terrell Owens do 5 minutes after supposedly signing that contract? He was like, nope, I don't want to be here anymore. And he went to Philadelphia. They tried
I don't know if
getting
there's
their
a
guy.
TO in the league.
Yeah, you probably
These
can't do
days.
that. But yeah, but teams go out and they talk to these agents. What is it going to take? This is what we're going to offer, yada, yada, yada. Do you fit? If that guy still chooses to go somewhere else, you can't blame Rand Carthon. What if the market says for this guy, you are to make, the market says $15 million per. And Rand said, okay, we're going to give you 15 and a half, 6. And this guy said, no, we want 20. What do you expect him to do? Pay the 20? No, you don't expect him to 20. It's like, thank you. We would love to have you on our team, but see you later. We'll play against you. Hope you well, unless you're playing against us. It's not just we're making this thing one-sided. It's not. The players got to want to come here too.
Of course.
And that's the way I see it.
And players do follow the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're going to have to overpay for 2 reasons. This is free agency. Mm-hmm. You have to overpay for free agents. Unfortunately, that's just the reality. And 2, you have to overpay because you're not a contender. But the Titans have money. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm not asking for Rand Carthon to go out and just sign absurd and ridiculous contracts. I'm not asking for that just to make headlines and just to make fans happy. That's not what I'm asking for. There were reports that the Titans were interested in C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He ultimately went to Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. I'm good with that. I don't want to
Justin Simmons is still out there.
And I'm not asking to overpay for a safety that's been hurt the last 2 to 3 seasons. I'm good with that. But when you find a good player that can help your team at a position of need, like how the Titans approach with Lloyd Cushenberry, I think that's how the Titans are going to have to be. They're going to have to be aggressive, specifically at positions of need. And look, I understand there is time left. But for right now, the way that I look at it, the Titans in free agency so far have been underwhelming. Mm-hmm. Now, look, other moves can happen. There could be moves in the works that come out.
But didn't they address needs? Didn't they address needs, the Tennessee Titans? Didn't they go out and they address needs across the board? Now,
Across the board, no.
How you look at those needs, and we can discuss this more after the break, but how do you look at those needs? Maybe a little bit different than maybe I do as far as how you rank them. But I think they did address some of the needs that they have this upcoming season.
They filled center, running back, one of the corner positions. I'm not crazy about the Kenneth Murray signing, but yeah, linebacker's a position of need. Always injured guard, I don't think was necessarily a position of need.
But that's more depth.
What they have done so far has addressed positions of need.
Exactly. So
but you still have a lot more left.
But free agency hasn't even started yet. The actual free agency haven't even started yet. That's the way I see it. Now,
but a lot of other teams in the league have made a lot of other moves. And I know you say you cannot compare to other teams, but I look at it and say, well, other teams have made bigger moves. Other teams have made more moves. Where are you? You still have a lot more needs to address, but we'll continue the conversation coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 4 moves that the Titans have been, whose name has been kind of, floating around some of these potential players. So we'll get into that coming up next. What those additions would mean for the Titans in free agency. We'll get into that coming up next. Jonathan Hutton in 30 minutes. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Talking Titans in free agency. Jonathan Hutton will join us in 30 minutes. We'll get Hutton's reaction to some of the Titans moves that they have made so far. Titans signed Sadiq Charles last night. 1-year deal, $2.5 million, nothing groundbreaking. He's been, in and out of the lineup in Washington. He's been dealing with injuries. He's been a left guard for the Commanders. Titans bring in Sadiq Charles in free agency to go along with Kenneth Murray, linebacker from the Chargers, Chidobe Awuzie at corner, center Lloyd Cushenberry, and running back Tony Pollard so far in free agency. But D-Mase, there's been some rumors. The rumor mill has been rumor milling. There has been 4 players potentially slated to the Tennessee Titans. First and foremost, this coming in from Diana Rossini last night. The Titans are targeting safety Justin Simmons, most recently with the Denver Broncos. I would love that.
Yes.
4-time All-Pro. I know he's on the older side. I think he's, 30, 31.
Yeah, but as long as he hadn't had any major injuries, I don't think he has, or maybe he has.
I
don't think he has.
He missed
Maybe
a couple
he
of games last season.
Okay.
He played 15.
Okay,
So played 15 games last season, 12 the year before, 17 the year before. So he's played.
He's fairly durable.
Fairly.
I wonder what the injuries were. As long as they were not chronic hamstring deals, then I'm good.
Yeah. So he's a 4-time All-Pro. He's a really good player, and safety is a position of need that the Titans haven't addressed yet. I know C.J. Gardner-Johnson was a name that the Titans were in on. He's going back to the Eagles. I think the Titans. I don't want to say, dodged a bullet there, but they dodged an injury concern in C.J. Gardner-Johnson going back to Philadelphia. Your thoughts on Justin Simmons? I'm for it.
Yeah, I think it would be a good addition. They need safety help. With losing Byard last year, during the season because of a trade, they need a veteran, but a veteran that still has some years left in him, good years left in him, a veteran that can be the quarterback of that back end. And I wouldn't be opposed to, them getting Justin Simmons. They need a guy like him on their defense. Again, a veteran guy, a really good player. How much he still has left, yet to be determined. But I'm sure, barring injury, he's still at least 2 really good years left in him. In the way that the Titans, we assume the Titans are going to play defense, and we're assuming that based upon what we saw in Baltimore, then, he may, this may be a really good spot for him. He may improve even more or have a better season than he had last season, now here or potentially being here with the Tennessee Titans. So I would love that move if indeed they were able to sign him, because they need another safety. I don't think you can go, the rookie route with his safety. They need a veteran safety. So if they can get him, that'd be a plus.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Nick Frazier actually sent us this comp. Justin Simmons to Kevin Byard. Really, for the most part, their stats are pretty similar. And if there are a couple statistical categories that Kevin Byard or Justin Simmons has an overwhelming advantage of, it kind of equals out in other statistical categories. For example, 30 interceptions for Justin Simmons in his career, 28 for Kevin Byard. Kevin Byard played 130 games, Justin Simmons 118. 4.5 sacks for Justin Simmons, 4 for Kevin Byard. Very comparable stats. 4-time All-Pro for Justin Simmons, twice for Kevin Byard. 2 Pro Bowls for Justin Simmons, 2 for Kevin Byard. I know that Kevin Byard in Philadelphia was a lot less than they wanted him to be in Philadelphia. But overall, fairly comparable to Kevin Byard. You get him a year or 2 younger. I'm for Justin Simmons. It's a position of need. I don't think you sign him to a 5-year deal or anything crazy like that, but that fills a position of need and a veteran that is good at the position.
Yeah, you got to have good players, especially one that could be an instant starter for you. So if they're able to land Justin Simmons, I think you just add it to Cushenberry and the cornerback out of Cincinnati, and the linebacker and the guard. We have to see. We got to see with that one.
With Kenneth Murray.
Yeah, Kenneth Murray, and then the guard, which I assume the guard is more so for depth. But then again, I could be totally wrong on that one.
With a 1-year deal worth $2.5 million, I can't imagine that they
Yeah.
have any long-term vision for City Charles. I'm underwhelmed with the Kenneth Murray signing, but it was announced that, or at least reported, that Jerome Baker is visiting with the Titans, most recently with Miami, a linebacker. He's a 67 grade on PFF, played 13 games last season, 17 games the year before. Last year, he dealt with a sprained MCL and a dislocated wrist. Neither of those two injuries stand out to me as being like overly concerning.
Nah, not in the least. I think those two injuries are injuries that he's well over now. They will not be an issue moving forward. But he did miss the games. He did have the injury, so you got to mark that. But they're not significant injuries.
Yeah, no, it doesn't bother me. I would love Jerome Baker.
Absolutely.
That a linebacker is absolutely a position.
Well, they
of
need
need.
that. They need.
And I don't
an
think
inside
Kenneth
backer.
Murray takes care of all of it.
No, if they can add another backer, because this is where this team hasn't gotten better or sustained, play is at that linebacker position, the inside linebacker position. I thought it was a mistake that they let Long Jr. go, but under the old regime, he was a chronic, habitual hamstring guy or just getting injured. Didn't miss no games in Miami, I don't think. So they've been trying to regroup. They didn't sign back Aziz. Arden Key really didn't work out. So they had to fill that void.
Rashawn Evans was a swing and a
Evans
miss.
was a swing and a
Monty
miss.
Rice, a swing and a miss.
I like the young kid they have now. Reese, is it Reese?
Otis Reese.
Otis Reese. I like a kid now. He does what you want to. He flies around. He's a sideline to sideline guy. He showed in the bit of time that he got this year that he's earned potential more playing time this upcoming season. Now, the coaching staff has changed. Defensive coordinator has changed. But if they go back to that tape, they'll see, him flying around to the ball, him hustling. So don't count him out just because he's not a marquee name. This is how some of these guys start out. Start out with no name at all, and then they start to get a little bit of playing time, and they start to excel, but people still don't pay attention to them. And then once they earn that right to be a starter, and all of a sudden they become really good players in this league. So don't count him out, but they do need to address the inside backer position with guys that have played in this league.
If he turns into something great, if he does, but there is a high likelihood that he doesn't. You're going to have to address it around him, and if he ascends, then great. This is an interesting one. As reported, maybe it came out early this morning, I believe, that Chase Young is having a meeting with the Titans. What are your thoughts on that?
You know what? Chase Young is an interesting one.
He is a fascinating case study,
it's just, it's like, which Chase Young are you wanting or are you looking at? Because people can say, well, you look at the Chase Young in Washington, there are a few times where he was injured a few times, and he never reached that potential because he was the second pick in the draft, right?
Second pick in the 2020 draft.
Second pick overall.
And think about the players in the 2020 draft. It was loaded. Tua, Justin Herbert, Justin Jefferson.
Yes. That was a fairly good draft. But then you look at him in what he has done. I mean, he was 3 years in Washington. The bad part about it is this first year was the year that he played the most. Played 15 games, started 15 games. After that, he missed a lot of games due to injury. Now, that would be my concern. Now, he did show flashes when he went to San Fran now. He showed flashes. He ended up playing 16 games altogether last year before
season.
he got traded, but he only started 6. But he showed that he can get to the pass rusher now. Now, whether that motor is still there, I don't know. But the guy has ability. He showed it his first year in Washington. Then he had 2 off years because, frankly, he didn't play. He was injured. And then they trade him to San Fran, and it seems like he gets a new life. And you see more of the player that you saw his first year in Washington. So my thing is, which player are you getting if you do go out and get him? Are you getting a guy that only played 12 games in 2 years, 22 and 23? Or are you getting a guy that ultimately end up going to San Fran and doing really well? He played well in the Super Bowl.
He had a good Super Bowl. He had a not so great divisional round game.
I think if you get a guy like this, it's a 1-year deal. It is a complete 1-year deal.
Yeah.
And it's a earn it deal. Like, you do well, you gonna get paid. If you don't do well, you may not be with another team, or if you are, you're gonna be making league minimum, and you're gonna be a backup. So which one do you want? We may get, if indeed they go get Chase Young, because I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah.
But if they do go get Chase Young, he has to understand, like, dude, this is your earn it year, so we may end up getting the best Chase Young thus far.
I'm not opposed to it at all. I can fall in love with the potential of Chase Young because it's there.
Yes.
I mean, we've seen it. At Ohio State, he was worthy of the second overall pick. We've seen flashes of it in the NFL, and it's not been consistent enough. So I can fall in love with the potential, but I can't pay potential. I would be willing to bring in Chase Young if you don't pay him a lot and it's not a long-term commitment. And it is, like you said, very much so a prove-it deal. And if you come in here and prove it, then we'll pay it for it. You know, but I can't pay you to come in here and just hope that you're going to turn into what you were in college now that we're 4 years removed from that.
No, you're right. I think it would, if indeed they do sign Chase Young, it would be an incentive deal. Your base salary probably for him would be 6.5, somewhere around there.
If that even, yeah.
If that, but then it has escalators that he can earn up to a certain amount. So that could be a good deal for him. And you're in a position where you come in and you're a starter. You know, you come in as a starter. So to me, it's an interesting one, but I wouldn't be mad or opposed to the Titans if they did sign him.
Depends on the money.
Exactly.
But I'm with you there. But Jerome Baker,
yeah.
Now I can fall in love with that.
Yeah.
And that's not just potential.
Yes.
All right, 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Let's get into your thoughts on this coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, hey, tune in to 1025, 1063 The Game for updates of the SEC men's basketball tournament this week, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Toyota, and Guinness. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and the Game Nashville app. A little AFC South news. The Texans have traded Malik Collins to the San Francisco 49ers, reportedly for a 7th-round pick, which feels incredibly low. But that could mean that the Texans could be in on some of these defensive tackles that are now on the market, potentially an Eric Armstead or who's another defensive tackle on the market, Sheldon Rankins. Mm-hmm. So interesting to watch. Interesting to watch the Houston Texans in the defensive tackle market. But we are talking Titans in free agency, and we'll get right into your thoughts. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, D-Mase, so you're good with not signing a lot of guys because it's about building up the culture for the long term, but you'd be fine with signing Chase Young.
Chase Young would come at a low cost. If you follow Chase and see, and this is why, just stick with the conversation as we're talking, because we said with Chase Young, it's a low risk, high reward. And this is a guy that has dealt with injury, an ACL. He had another injury in there, so that second and third year for him was a wash, really. He played, but everybody knows after an ACL, it's going to take you a year, especially at that position. We saw it firsthand here with Harold Landry. Harold Landry started to really come back into form. He missed a whole year. Then he started to come back in form in the middle of the season. Then we started to see more of the Harold Landry that we were used to. And Chase Young is the same. He had a good first year. I think he ended up winning Defensive Player of the Year for the rookies, Rookie Defensive Player of the Year. That second year, he gets hurt. The third year, he's working back from that. The last year, they end up trading him to San Fran. He ended up having 7.5 sacks. He had 7.5 sacks his first year. You got to throw away those 2 middle years because he was getting over injury. I think now, just look at it. Listen to it. Now you would be getting a Chase Young that's closer to what he was his rookie year. Why? Because he's now 2 years removed from that ACL injury. He looked different than he did in prior years. This year he looked different. So what you're banking on as a Tennessee Titans is this is a prove-it year for you, Chase Young. Nobody out there is going to give you the long-term deal you want, and rightfully so, because you've been injured and you haven't earned that. So now you get an opportunity. We pay you $6.5, $7 million with some escalators, possibly up to $10 million, to earn the right to then go to free agency. It will only be a 1-year deal, so it's a low risk, high reward type of deal. That's what you do that with certain players, and I think Chase Young is one of those players that you do it with, because I think whoever gets him, if the Titans don't get him, whoever gets him, they're going to get the Chase Young closer to his rookie year. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, maybe even better, because now he has some years up under his belt. You're going to get the version of him that's much better than what he was his rookie year.
I mean, anyone that would sign him would hope.
Exactly, and that's what your hope, best case scenario. Yeah. Like worst case scenario, hey, it doesn't work out. You didn't spend a lot of money on him. Now you can let him walk after a year.
As long as you keep it low risk.
Exactly. It can't be like we discussed off air. It can't be like we want a 3-year deal, 15 per. No. Yeah, no. Get out of here.
No, absolutely
you hadn't earned
not.
That.
Absolutely not. It would absolutely be a prove-it deal, and a deal that's not going to, completely handicap you into the Chase Young sweepstakes for the next, few years.
Exactly.
Just because you thought that you could get something out of him that nobody else could. Like, maybe you can. Mm-hmm. But I can't pay for potential.
No.
But I would be interested in a low-risk deal, a 1-year, not a ton of money for a Chase Young, just for the potential. And if he doesn't realize it, then you move on. And if he does, then great.
That's what they did a few years ago with Danico Autry. They signed him, to a 2-year deal, 3-year deal. Low risk. It worked out for them.
Yeah.
It worked out tremendously for them. They chose not to sign him back. I wish they had signed him back.
But
I guess
both.
He was at that age point where they figured they needed to get a little bit younger at that position. But I wish they would have signed Danico Autry back here.
Another texter texts in about free agency. Says, would you let your kid spend all of his birthday money on candy from the first gas station that you stop at just because they want candy and the other kids are doing it? First and foremost, candy is a treat. Having players in the National Football League and an entire actual roster, that's not a treat. That's a necessity in a multi-billion-dollar business. So don't act like Sadiq Charles, a backup guard in Washington, is like getting Twizzlers from the gas station. No. These are necessities. These are important things. Would you spend your money on groceries because you need to eat? Yes. Yes, and that is what we're talking about in free agency. But the texter continues to say, absolutely not, you wouldn't do that. There's too many holes to just spend all of your money in free agency. Where else are you going to spend it? Where else do you spend your money? You only have 5 draft picks. Mm-hmm. You're not going to break the bank in the draft. There's nowhere else to spend money but in free agency. And no, you don't have to do it on players that are injured or not good enough or doesn't fit your system. Of course not. You're not going to spend dumb. You're going to spend smart, but you're going to have to spend because you need players. All right, we'll catch up with Jonathan Hutton coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, and the Game Nashville app. It is noon on a Wednesday, so that means that it is, in fact, Hutton o'clock. Jonathan Hutton from Outkick joins us now. Hut, always appreciate your time and appreciate you for joining us. The Titans have made a few moves so far in free agency, bringing in Tony Pollard, Lloyd Cushenberry, Chidobe Awuzie, the cornerback position, Kenneth Murray, linebacker, and Sadiq Charles, the most recent signing yesterday afternoon. Your initial impressions of what the Titans have done so far in free agency?
They've addressed key positions that they either lack depth in or were just not good in to begin their overhaul of this roster. It's going to be a rebuild. This is not a quick fix. I think they got the best possible center in Lloyd Cushenberry, a proven starter, consistent, a big player. They're getting bigger at that position. They needed a Ben Jones type guy. This guy's it's rare. I heard Rex Rhodes say this, and I totally agree. It's rare to get a free agent who is at the top of his game and going into the prime of his career at his age, but also does not have a lengthy injury history whatsoever. And that's key here. 2 sacks allowed over the last 2 seasons for Cushenberry. I'm impressed that they jumped out and got the best possible player at that position. Tony Pollard is interesting on the surface level, but it's clear they wanted backs that are going to be interchangeable. I immediately think that they are less predictable based on which running back is on the field. And he's coming off a season where he started every game for Dallas. And then Chidobe Awuzie, if you're looking for interceptions, he's not this dude. He's not that guy. But in Denard Wilson's defense, he's a versatile player on the back end and a physical guy who will also help in the run game. But the key here is, can he cover? And he's immediately one of the 3 that can play all those positions. And now we get to see if they're going to go big, Caroline, at the corner position and continue that in free agency, where there's still some big names out there. And Kenneth Murray, I was just reading up on what his tenure has been like with the Chargers. If you're at his level and they didn't pick up the 5th-year option, that's not saying very much for the veteran. So he's coming off a year where he had a career high in tackles. He had 3 sacks. He broke the football up in some pass breakups, but he also just based on observers, far too often he's caught out of position. They're going to add more, and they have added more with, I believe, Baker is going to visit, but they need to do more at that spot because they literally had nobody at that spot. They have to continue to address that, and they don't have a lot of draft capital. They do have a lot of cash, and they're using it to their advantage.
Yeah, I'm pretty underwhelmed with the Kenneth Murray signing, but like you said, bringing in Jerome Baker for a visit. The linebacker position as a whole for the Titans has just been so underwhelming over the last few years. Swing and a miss on Rashaan Evans, swing and a miss on Monty Rice. It feels like it's a position that has gone addressed at least over the past couple of years. But you bring up Jerome Baker, another player that the Titans are meeting with is Chase Young, which I think is a fascinating case study. What do you make of both Jerome Baker and Chase Young? And if you were the Titans, what kind of deal would you sign either of those 2?
Well, I mean, I think both of those players, and maybe with Chase Young, I mean, if he's healthy from that knee injury, here's what I think of Chase Young. The 49ers traded 2 picks for him, I believe. And for this short-term deal from the trade deadline this past season to now, it doesn't feel like they're even trying to bring him back. But he's coming off a season where he had 15 quarterback hits. He had 8 sacks or so for the combined year with the Commanders and the 49ers. It didn't have the impact that the 49ers wanted. He's young. I think he's 25 or 26 years old. So that's to his advantage. And I think at this stage, D-Mase and Willy chime in too, Caroline. If I'm him, I'm looking for maybe a short-term deal, 1 or 2 years to cash in and bet on himself. And then you get the long-term deal that he's looking for that he didn't get in Washington. And as far as Jerome Baker, I like him. And he would be paired up, hypothetically, if he signs with Frank Bush, who he has played with before. coaching his position. I like that pairing, and that's what they've kind of done here. They've gone with who they know, and it's pretty clear that the front office, from the management standpoint, is listening and collaborating with the coaches that are have worked with certain players just based on what they've done in the secondary, what they could do at linebacker, and certainly what they've done overall with the deals with Callahan. I like the direction of that with the familiarity of this new regime and what they want. That's key here, and the coaches seem to be getting the players that fit their style and system.
We'll talk with Jonathan Hutton, Outkick. Now, you're right about that, Jonathan, in regards to Chase Young. I think it would, if indeed you do sign him, or if anyone signs him, which they will, it's a one-year deal, prove-it deal. And to me, like I told Caroline, I know some people may look at it as, say, listen, he was a former first-round draft pick, second pick in the draft. It didn't work out in Washington. They sent him to San Fran. San Fran doesn't want to sign him back. But I think the way that Rand Carthon and the Titans are looking at it as a one-year deal, a one-year prove-it deal, because if you prove it to us, then you can go out and ask for, 15, 17, $18 million, which we may get the best version of Chase Young thus far. What do you say? What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, look, I'm thinking about what they have to replace in the pass rush for what they lost with Danico Autry.
Exactly.
I mean, that guy, that's a big loss for them up front. And, the production and the consistency, I don't think you make up in one player with who they bring in. There's going to be a couple of guys who need to bring that to the table to pair with Jeffrey Simmons and what they're doing outside. So I like the one-year deal. I like players in their final year of their contract. I love wide receivers, Mase, who are in the final year of their contracts. Love them. And certainly on the pass rush and at corner, they generally play through injuries a bit better, and they have more to prove and more to lose, quite frankly. And especially guys who are coming off of their rookie deal, the second contract is where you can cash in. And now he's a year behind if he's only signing a one-year deal, and he's already been traded once. I like betting on Chase Young with the production of what we've seen when he's been healthy. And Mase, this is also key. The Titans in the last few years have brought in players through free agency. I'm thinking Bud Dupree and others. They've done it in the draft too, that have had an injury history, and that has not been great for production. On the flip side of signing in Nashville versus where they were, I'm wary of that just based on what we've seen. But this would be again, if the Titans get what they want, this would be a low risk, high reward type signing. If in fact you get the one-year deal, bet on yourself. And it's quite frankly, it's similar to what we've seen with some of the contracts that players that have left here recently have gone on to do. They've cashed in, and I think Alshire's trying to do it again with what they're doing in Houston.
Now, obviously, the wide receiver position is another position of need for the Titans, and they have not addressed it via free agency. But there are still a few names out there, most notably Calvin Ridley. Now, I do expect there to be other receivers come June 1st, but you don't look that far because they have the draft coming up. If they're going to address the receiver position, they would first do it in a draft. But what do you say? Because now it went from, go get Marquise Brown, which – it's a no. People, stop it with that one. Now it's Curtis Samuel. Stop it with Curtis Samuel. What kills me, Hut, is that people talk about the speed. I get it. You run the 40, you show the speed. Yeah, he showed speed in college. But he hasn't shown that speed in the NFL. There's different speed. You can play fast in college. Why? Because everybody else seemed to be slower than you. But when you step up a notch, that's when it really tells me whether you got speed or not. And this dude, Curtis Samuel, hasn't averaged over 14 yards a reception in his whole career. And he's been in the league, 5-6 years? So with the people, stop it with the speed. If you're going to talk about speed, then talk about somebody that not only shows the speed off the field, but shows the speed on the field. Tyreek type of speed. They show it off the field and on the field. And because my thing is this, a guy like Mike Evans, You don't consider him fast, right? But he averages over 13, 14 yards a catch. But then the guys you consider fast are averaging 10, 11, 12 yards
Hollywood
a catch.
Brown.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Well, and AJ Brown comes to mind. Not
Exactly.
the fastest guy.
Absolutely.
But productive. Yeah. I mean, and so I like Curtis Samuel if he's the number 3 guy in your receiving corps. You know, like he finds the end zone. I'll give him credit for that. And I only know that through fantasy football. So, but he would be brought in to be more currently than what he's been. And I don't like paying a guy for that. The group of wide receivers right now, Mace, they're not the lead dog, right? Other than Ridley, but Ridley's really not that guy either, or he wouldn't be on the market right now. So I look at it from the perspective of that every team's just trying to piece things together with the free agents currently, and they don't have to rush to do it because the draft is heavy in wide receiver this year, and you can probably get a better overall productive player than what some of these guys have shown. But here's also, I mean, the Titans do need a big upgrade there.
Oh, they do. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I mean, Curtis Samuel would be an upgrade. Even though I'm totally on your side of this with what we've seen versus the hype behind him. So can he help the Titans? Yes. Do they need to overpay for any of these guys? No, because the other teams aren't going to do it either. If that was true, we would be seeing some of the contracts that I'm surprised by with the running back position with how quickly these guys went off the shelf.
Talking to Jonathan Hutton, I'll kick. Now, how do you think, or do you think or believe that the Titans are, one of the front runners to acquire Ladarius Sneed? Now, what has come out is a 3rd-round pick. If they can get him for a 3rd-round pick, please do it. I mean, I know they don't have one this year, but obviously it would be the 3rd-round pick for next year. If you can get him for a 3rd-round pick, which, Hud, I don't think that's too far outside of, I don't think that's too outlandish to say, because again, you're getting a player that Kansas City feels they cannot sign. So if you cannot sign a player, what you're trying to do is get as much as you possibly can. And maybe other teams they're starting to see other teams are only offering a 3rd-round pick. So a 3rd-round pick and a player may be just enough to get Ladarius Sneed here or anywhere else.
Titans need one of those picks, right? They need the 3rd round. Kansas City, though, I would just use Ladarius Sneed under the franchise tag if I'm just going to get a 3rd-round pick in return. He's more valuable to my defense than a 3rd-round pick would be for their whole team.
And they don't even have a 3rd-round pick.
It would be a 3rd-round for next year.
I'm just saying,
like a
I'm saying, any
2025
offer
third?
from other teams.
No way.
Hey, if that's I don't know why we're saying no way, Hud, because if Kansas City's going to do it, then let them do it. I take them for a 3rd round next year.
I'm saying if I'm KC, I'm not trading him for anything like that. I would just keep him on my roster and pay him under the tag, especially after Mahomes is restructured and gave him some space. Like, again, and what he's meant to that defense, I would rather have him on my team than have a 3rd-round pick. That's just how I'm viewing his value, and I don't think they separate from him just based on that, unless there's some kind of, but it's a mutual that they're trying to find a trade partner. You're going to have to give up more than that, I would think. I mean, but maybe not, because Justin Fields is rumored to be able to be traded for a 3rd-round pick, which is also crazy with what's going on here. I find it hard to believe that you're going to franchise tag a player and then trade him for a 3rd, especially with the value that he meant to the defensive side of the football, paired with Chris Jones, who they're also bringing back. So if they're going for the 3-peat, they want him on that team. But he's just not going to get the long-term deal. He's going to have to play on the 1-year deal. But guess who else? Chris Jones just did that. And it worked out in his favor too. I'm not trading him for that type of value, Mace. I'm keeping him.
I hear you on that, but if they do it, then
so
be it.
If they do it,
but the Titans have to give up more than a 3rd this year, because I'm not trading him if it's for next year, a next year's pick. I would trade him for a pick this year, and the Titans currently don't have that.
Exactly.
Talk with Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Derrick Henry headed to the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
What do you think of that move from the Baltimore perspective and from Derrick's perspective?
I mean, from Derek's perspective, it's smart. I mean, I think it's a fit for Baltimore, but it's a fit for Henry with what his priorities have been. You know, he mentioned he wants to go and compete for a title. Baltimore gives him that opportunity. They're winning at a high level. They're playing in the AFC Championship game. They have a two-time MVP at quarterback. I mean, say what you want about what happened against Kansas City, but the fact is they handed to their running backs 6 times in that game. 6 times running backs touched the football out of the backfield in a game where the defense for Baltimore did not allow a single point in the second half. If Derrick Henry's on that team, they're going to get the football more to the running backs instead of putting it on the arm of Lamar Jackson. I like the RPO game that Derrick has been in, especially whenever he was with Arthur Smith out of the pistol. Baltimore's in the shotgun a lot. If they go to the pistol, that gives Derrick the opportunity to be more effective. And he was a 2,000-yard rusher in that type of offense with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback in 2020. So I like it from that angle too. I think Baltimore gets a guy that there are certain franchises that just have an identity that follows them no matter what year, no matter what era, no matter what regime, whatever. Baltimore is just known for being that physical team. And they now have a back that can pair with them. It just fits overall with running player and organization. It makes total sense. It's bittersweet at the same time from the Titans perspective and Titans fans perspective. I totally get it. But take the Ravens helmet off or the logo off and just know it's a franchise A, franchise B, or C. To me, the description of that team describes the running back that they just received, and they want to run the football. They're about it, and they need more than just Lamar Jackson running the football. And now for a running back that routinely had 8 in the box against him stacked up, now they have options with Lamar Jackson running it. On the RPO, you've got Derrick Henry, and certainly he's coming off of a year Lamar is where he had the best wide receiving core so far of his career. So Mark Andrews will be back. Offensively, it makes sense, and they're bringing back a really good defense too. Henry made the right choice. If the other option was Dallas, personally, I'd rather be in Baltimore.
I think the Ravens
I'm
are going
with
to
you.
be so dangerous. I think it was a great move for both sides.
They already were, you know.
Yeah.
They already were. Now they get he's 30 years old. He was a target for the Ravens last season at the trade deadline, and now they get a guy who Caroline. He led the league in 3 rushing categories from 2017 to 2022 in yards, touchdowns, and yards per game. And now at 30, while you don't generally see the player cash in after that age, especially at that position, they got him for $8 million a year. He's coming off a year where he's making 12. That's to me good business by Baltimore, and I think it's a good decision by Henry.
I'm with you 100%. Last one for you, Hut. What are some positions or even players that are kind of non-negotiables for you for the Titans to address in free agency? Let's just say within the first couple of weeks.
Well, I mean, wide receiver, just go by position here. Wide receiver has to be addressed in free agency and the draft. They need another corner. And this is me going through the angle of drafting a tackle in the first round. They're clearly looking at defensive line. They want to upgrade there. And if they're going offensive tackle, and we're just following the trends, Jonah Williams, I don't know if he signed within the last hour and a half. You guys may know. But the Bengals left tackle testing free agency.
Yeah.
He played right tackle after they signed Orlando Brown. Callahan would know him very well. Mm-hmm. And, well, he allowed 13 sacks before at left tackle. So he's got to be better at that angle of things. Maybe that's why he's still in the market. But again, with the right coaching, he could be dominant. Is Callahan high on him? Was that the right coaching? Again, he's been there. He knows him. The offensive line will be addressed, and it has been, but tackle to me is, I think if I'm trending towards the draft, and if that's the case, wide receiver's got to be at item 0 of all of this for what they're doing. But there are role players at the free agent level right now. There are elite players at pick number 7 that they could have. Options are open for them, and beyond that, they need another backer. I think the Jerome Baker visit will be key.
Yeah.
And I could see them, if they want to really go big, that there's still some some high end corners on the market too that can come in and immediately upgrade at the number one spot for you and allow Chidobe Awuzie to be the guy that he's been, not the player that you're paying him to be, which typically matches up with the player that they've been in free agency. Denard Wilson will get the most out of him, but I don't know if Awuzie's continue to trend up because we've already seen him paired with Denard Wilson in the past.
Yeah. Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Hut, always appreciate you. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll chat with you next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Always enjoy this segment, guys, and you guys have a good rest of the week.
Appreciate you too, Hut. Jonathan Hutton, he is the very best. We'll react to what Jonathan Hutton had to say there. Plus, I know that the entire city of Nashville and all Titans fans have been mourning the loss of Derrick Henry. But there has been some spicy reaction to the Derrick Henry and Baltimore Ravens marriage in the national media sphere. I want to get D-Mase's reaction to that, and we'll do that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, Hey Joy 102.5 and 106.3 The Game, and Guinness for Pinewood Madness. It's the Patio SEC Watch Party this Friday. 102.5 The Game will be broadcasting live from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., so stop by and enter for your chance to win tickets to see Green Day. Showcase your skills in Pinewood Social's arcade basketball game competition, win tournament tickets, and watch all the televised games on their jumbo LED screen. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com/events. So it is official, unfortunately. I know it was a day that Titans fans were dreading for so long, but Derrick Henry now officially is a Baltimore Raven, and even just saying it feels strange. And I've seen jersey swap photos of Derrick Henry all over social media. Just seeing him in a Baltimore Ravens uniform looks funky. It looks wrong, but good for Derrick and good for the Baltimore Ravens, because I think the Baltimore Ravens are now a better team because Derrick Henry is part of it. But not everybody agrees with me. Not everybody agrees with what you think D-Mase, Derrick Henry, will bring to the Baltimore Ravens. Because Ryan Clark was talking about this morning on Get Up. He doesn't necessarily agree that Derrick Henry is the key to pushing the Baltimore Ravens forward. This was Ryan Clark on Get Up this morning.
When I saw that, I thought to myself, wow, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the same backfield, that could be about as dynamic as anything we've ever seen. What was your first thought?
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I think when is the last time we ever came to work and Kimberly Martin was telling us, oh my goodness, the Ravens can't run the football. Now, we've heard the Ravens won't run the football.
They didn't
the Ravens
Right, they didn't. Yes.
run the football, but we've never had an issue with Derrick Henry having to add to a Ravens run game that has not been explosive, that has not been dynamic, that has not been
Stop
physical.
doing this to Josh
But
Norman.
they've never
Stop
had anyone who
Stop
could do
it.
that.
Josh
RC.
Norman is
They've never had
person.
anyone who could do that.
But you've also never seen people just run up on Gus Edwards willy-nilly,
Yeah.
right? And so we're looking at a guy like Derrick Henry replacing Gus Edwards, and you're thinking about more so the aura of Derrick Henry than what he's actually going to add to a run game that was already number one in the entire NFL. Will you be scared? May you take dives sometimes instead of taking quarterback? Yes, you're going to have to make those decisions schematically, but this doesn't change the fate of the Baltimore Ravens. What changes the fate of the Baltimore Ravens is Lamar Jackson in that pass game being proficient and efficient in the playoffs, in the critical football moments. It's a coach understanding that we got here by running the football. There's nothing to prove because Patrick Mahomes is on the other side of the field, and that was Todd Monken as an offensive coordinator. I'm excited to see what this run game will look like from a physical standpoint, but this doesn't change the fact that Kansas City is the team to beat, and Vegas still has it right.
All right, again, that was Ryan Clark on Get Up this morning. D-Mase, your initial thoughts?
One thing he was right about, it doesn't change, I think, who the favorite is to win or to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. I don't think it's changed. I think as long as Kansas City has, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, more importantly, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. As long as those two guys are connected to the hip, they're always going to be, it seems like, the favorite
Of course.
to win the AFC. Not necessarily win the Super Bowl, but win the AFC and represent the AFC in the Super Bowl.
And probably even to win the Super Bowl.
Exactly. So, but that's more so because of the quarterback and the head coach than anything else. So he's right about that. But to say it was, I don't understand that. You're getting arguably the greatest runner of the football we've seen in the last 10 years. Like, he's been the greatest runner of the football we've seen in the last 10 years. His physicality, his speed, breaking tackles, everything. We have not seen a running back like this in the NFL in a very, very long time. So to sit there and say it's a when he's still playing at a Pro Bowl, All-Pro, he's playing at an All-Pro level. He's still playing at an All-Pro level based upon the numbers. He's still playing at an All-Pro level. And we figured taking less carries, and we figured if the line was better this year, then he would have probably eclipsed or gotten to the same amount of yardage he had the previous season, which was 1,500. This changes the Baltimore Ravens for this one reason. Because everybody says, well, it's up to Lamar. If they're going to get over that hump, it's up to Lamar. It's up to Lamar. And for the most part, you're right, because the quarterback has a lot to do in regards to getting you to the Super Bowl. You got to have him playing good football, not turning the football over. And he doesn't have to play great. He just have to play good enough without turnovers. You add Derrick Henry to that mix. What does it do for the Baltimore Ravens now? It does this. They do not have to put as much pressure on the quarterback. Kansas City won the Super Bowl because of this reason. And I will debate anybody across the table about it. They won because their defense took the pressure off of Patrick Mahomes. If their defense was an average defense to below average defense, they wouldn't have been nowhere near the playoff. Why? Because all of the pressure would have been put on their quarterback to get him there. And we saw it wasn't working. They had to figure out, somebody had to step up big in order for that to work. Patrick was Patrick, but everything around him on offense wasn't clicking. So they couldn't do it. So he was putting pressure on himself. You can see it in his face throughout the whole season. It's like, damn, like, what more can I got to do more? But then once the defense started to step up, they started to play better. Even with the drop balls, things started to calm down a little bit. Why? Because Patrick Mahomes knew, I don't have to score 35 points now. I can score 20 points and still beat you. Why? Because my defense is playing great now. That's the way I see football. I don't see it from any other way. You have a hell of a quarterback? Yeah, but that hell of a quarterback needs help. Tom Brady, greatest quarterback ever, he needed help from his defense. His defense is what carried them for a few of those Super Bowls. And then he sort of picked it up. He became Tom Brady after that. But it was his defense that held everything together. Kansas City Chiefs, the last 2 seasons, they won a Super Bowl. It was their defense that held everything together. Last year, he felt he didn't have to score 30 points. Once his defense got on the road, he didn't have to score 30 points. He just didn't turn the ball over. Just make catches when you need to make it. We score 20 points, we win. And that's basically how it was. The Baltimore Ravens are in that position now where the quarterback doesn't need to be the end-all, be-all. Does he need to play better? Absolutely, he needs to play better. And he knows that. Exactly. He needs to play better.
Yeah.
But if they have a Derrick Henry last year, remember, Kansas City didn't score in the second half. Baltimore didn't do much in the second half either. Why? Because that Kansas City defense.
Yeah.
But Kansas City knew, like, listen, we're going to start running the football. Our defense is going to hold you because you can't run the football and you're choosing not to run the football, and we don't think you can go pass for pass with us. So if I get a Derrick Henry, now you know what? I got more than one way to beat you. I don't have to go pass for pass with Patrick Mahomes. How many guys can go pass for pass with Patrick Mahomes in the NFL?
None.
Exactly. Maybe Joe Burrow.
Maybe.
Possibly. But nobody really.
The only one that's been able to beat him.
Exactly. Josh Allen couldn't beat him. Lamar couldn't beat him. Nobody could beat him. Purdy couldn't beat him. He had 2 shots of it.
If Jimmy Garoppolo can't beat you.
Garoppolo couldn't beat you, and then Purdy couldn't beat you.
I'm joking.
So they had 2 shots of it.
Yeah.
We got to find another way to win football games. This gives us another way to score points. As long as our defense stayed the way it has been or close to it, now we can beat you running a football, because you got to honor that run now. You got to honor both of them. And then they got another back coming back. So you got to honor that. And we can beat you passing, because we're going to go out and get another wide receiver coupled with Likely, Andrews, and Zay Flowers. We're going to go out and get another speedster or somebody we can count on. Now we have a way. Now we take the pressure off our quarterback. He's going to be Lamar. But in the playoffs, we need to play a different way. We need to have multiple ways to beat you and multiple ways to score. They didn't have that last year, or they didn't choose to use it in the playoffs. With a Derrick Henry, no. Ain't no running the ball 16 times, 8 of it to run the quarterback. No. It's Derrick Henry's getting the ball for sure 16 times. And now, Lamar, you can run 8 times if you want to in the playoffs. They got him for the playoffs. It's not for the regular season, people. They got Derrick Henry for the playoffs. That's just why they got him.
I get so frustrated when I hear, well, it's not that great of a move because it doesn't make you better than the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course it doesn't. Until any other team in the National Football League gets a quarterback that's better than Patrick Mahomes. And frankly, I don't think there's a quarterback on this planet that is better than Patrick Mahomes. Then there is no move that can catapult you further than the Kansas City Chiefs, at least on paper. Because the Kansas City Chiefs have the best quarterback in the planet and has proven time and time and time again that he can beat you and he can carry the team on his shoulders. That he can do whatever he needs to do to win games in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. So it feels, and I love Ryan Clark, it feels a little lazy to me to say, well, it doesn't make you better than the Chiefs, so it's a man move. Is there a move in the National Football League that can be made to be better than the Chiefs?
Unless you stack a team.
Unless Justin Jefferson goes to the Cincinnati Bengals, like all of Twitter was talking about was going to happen last night, which...
Now that catapults them over Kansas City, I believe, if that was to happen.
Yeah, that would be the move.
Yeah.
And there is nobody in this city that would like to see that trio back together again than it would be me. But let me tell you, that ain't happening. That is not going to happen. But that is the only move. So I think it's lazy to say that, well, this move doesn't make you better than the Kansas City Chiefs, because it is still about Lamar Jackson. It is still about that passing game. It is still about Lamar Jackson playing at a higher level in the playoffs, 1,000%. It's about Baltimore replenishing some of the pieces that they lost defensively in free agency. They don't have Patrick Queen anymore. He's a very impactful player. It's about what the Ravens are going to do to fill some of those holes that were created, absolutely. But to say that Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs in the National Football League, being plugged into an already really good and stout running offense doesn't make them better? Just because it doesn't make you better than Patrick Mahomes in the Kansas City Chiefs doesn't mean that it doesn't make you better.
Look at the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills probably are closer because some people see Josh Allen as the third best quarterback in the National Football League behind Joe Burrow and obviously Patrick Mahomes. So if you got Josh Allen and you still can't beat the Cincinnati Bengals and you have you went out and you got running backs so you can run the football, okay? But even with that, the quarterback led the team in rushing attempts and rushing yardage.
Josh Allen
led
the Bills in rushing yards?
For that game, for the Kansas City game in the playoffs.
Okay.
He led them in rushing attempts. No, he led them in rushing yards, not rushing attempts. Rushing attempts was James Cook.
Okay.
But James Cook had 18 carries, 61 yards. But what I'm saying is this. Teams are trying to find other ways to beat Kansas City. That's what it's about. It's about finding a way to beat Kansas City, not in the regular season, because these teams feel we're going to be in the playoffs. Not in the regular season. It's in the playoffs. How do we beat Kansas City in the playoffs? Because if we try to go quarterback for quarterback, we tried it. We're not going to do it. We can't. We've tried every team in the AFC outside of New England, which New England did beat them with Tom Brady. It was close, but they did beat them. If the guy doesn't jump off sides, Houston, if he doesn't jump off sides, Kansas City, New England loses that game.
Yeah.
And they had the greatest quarterback of all times. You can't try to go quarterback to quarterback with Patrick Mahomes.
You can't.
That's just dumb to try to do. Yes, you got to find other ways to win. That's why Kansas City is trying to find them a running game, because they understand that we need to also find another way, because if our defense isn't playing well, y'all not catching the football like y'all were not this past year, then it's going to be hard on our quarterback. Even though we believe he can do it, it's going to be hard. We need to develop a running game. Our defense now is stacked, so we're good. Other teams are now looking at that and saying, you know what? We got damn good quarterbacks, but we tried that. We went down that road. Quarterback for quarterback, pass for pass. We can't do it.
You have to be multidimensional.
Exactly. What other ways can we beat Kansas City in the playoffs, not in the regular season? That's what it's about, Ryan Clark. It's about the playoffs, not about the regular season. These teams feel they're going to get in the playoffs. Now we're going to have to, one of us is going to have to play Kansas City. One of us, hopefully it's not us. Hopefully we don't play them until the AFC Championship game. Yeah. But one of us is going to have to play them. And we know we can't go quarterback to quarterback. We can't go OC to OC. We got to find another way to win. How do we win? We get us a running game and we get us a defense, slow the game down, keep it dirty, keep it mucky, and run our running back and slow the game down. That's what the Baltimore Ravens are thinking. They're not thinking about, oh, we need to go pass. They tried it. Why am I going to do that again? Now we need to add to it.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder, because one thing that we've learned about Derek, you got to get him going. Mm-hmm. You know, like he's not going to first handoff, he's not going to rip one for 80. Mm-hmm. He might, but you got to get him going. Do wonder how that looks in Baltimore when he doesn't get as many touches, I believe, and what he did here. When he would have to, you know, the more he gets the ball, the better he gets. He's not going to get the ball 35 times a game, 30, 35 times a game, probably even 20 times a game. So does that affect his play? I don't know. We'll see. But that is the one thing that I maybe have a question mark about. But you add good players to a good team, you get better.
Exactly.
It's not that
I don't
difficult.
think it's
I think it's a great move.
It's not like Derrick Henry went from 1,500 yards to 700 yards last year with like 6 touchdowns.
It's way better than that.
And he looked like he declining. He still was an all-pro back, if you think about it, based upon his numbers. He still was an all-pro Pro Bowl back.
All right, I want to get into your phones on this coming up next. We got a bunch of thoughts on Derrick Henry, so right to your phones we go. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, hey, the NCAA tournament is right around the corner, and now it's time for you to sign up and play the official 1025 The Game Bracket Challenge, brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Twin Peaks, and Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Go to thegamenashville.com/bracket challenge or the 1025 The Game Nashville app right now and sign up to play for your chance to win 4-day passes to Bonnaroo. Ooh, I didn't get Bonnaroo passes when I won.
Oh, you didn't?
I'll talk to you soon
so
about
sad.
that. Brackets will open after the teams have been selected on Sunday, March 17th.
Happy hump day, everyone. It is Wednesday, right? Yeah, it is Wednesday. So if you're going to make your bets, there's games going on this weekend. Actually, there's a game going on tonight. The Nashville Predators are playing tonight. So if you want to place a bet on that, absolutely do it, and do it with our partners in sports, okay? And I'm excited to tell you about their introductory promotion available to all new customers in Tennessee. It's the No Danger First Wager. When you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000 No Danger First Wager. When you place your first bet on Zen Sports, you will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses, up to $1,000. Plus, Zen Sports has launched a new VIP program for the premier bettors in Tennessee. If you think you might qualify, then listen up. The VIP program is by invite only, so if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sports book, and I mean no other sports book, will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports. So what are you waiting on, bettors? Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports, where betting just got better. Also, remember this: gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Give it to Derek. Just give it to Derek. We'll run it up. Just get to Derek. Just get to Derek.
That was Lamar Jackson at the Pro Bowl a couple of weeks ago. I think you're going to start hearing that a little bit more. Lamar Jackson, just give it to Derek. Just give it to Derek. You hear that a lot. It's going to hurt. It's going to be okay. But Ryan Clark said he thinks the deal was meh. I disagree, but I want to get your thoughts on that. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to get in on the conversation. Cameron Texan says running the ball wasn't Baltimore's problem. Unless Henry is going to play quarterback in the playoffs, this doesn't solve their problem.
Again, how many times can I say this? It is about running the football. Because how many times did Baltimore run the football?
A lot.
During the season. How many times they run it in that one game?
In the playoffs, not enough.
Not enough. They ran it more times with their quarterback than they did with their actual running backs. Now, again, maybe they thought going into the game that they needed to open it up more and, let the pass set up their run. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
You add a Derrick Henry. I don't care how good your running game was. As good as it wasn't enough in the playoffs. And people, I want y'all to understand this. When you have a running back like Derrick Henry, it takes the pressure off your quarterback. If Kansas City had a true running game, or if they had receivers that were catching the ball, or if their defense wasn't playing the way that they were playing, mainly their defense, it would have put a lot of pressure on Patrick Mahomes to win if their defense wasn't top-notch. But their defense was, so it took a little bit of pressure off of Patrick Mahomes. Now, he had to beat Patrick Mahomes to win, obviously, I know that, but it takes the pressure. If they're not capable of running a football, Kansas City, which they ran the football effectively when they needed to. That takes the pressure off of the quarterback. Why? Because the quarterback doesn't have to worry about if, Rice or one of these guys are going to catch the football. Now I could just turn it around and give it to Pacheco and let him start getting yards and let him eat up clock.
And they did that.
And they did that.
Lot.
So people, look at it from a logical football standpoint. It's not about who we were. It's about what we're going to be in the playoffs. This, again, listen to me. 15 years of playing. This was a playoff move. This not a regular. They feel we're going to be a good team in the play. Now, their division is hard.
Yeah.
It has gotten harder now.
That might be the toughest division.
Yeah, they're going to have to tussle in there. But getting Derrick Henry was for the playoffs. So when they run up against Buffalo, when they run up against, more importantly, Kansas City, now I can beat you with more guys. I have a guy Gus Edwards is a good bet. But you tell me, a defensive coordinator, any defensive coordinator out there in the NFL, college, high school, if I put Gus Edwards in the backfield, then I put Derrick Henry in the backfield, who am I more afraid of?
Derrick Henry.
Absolutely.
And
who am I going to pay more attention to?
You're crazy. It's Derrick Henry.
Gus Edwards is a good back.
Of course. He's not Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry has been a great back in this league. He's not to that magnitude now, but you still have to pay attention to Derrick Henry. They set it up however now what's going to be the challenge is this. How is Todd Monken going to sort of incorporate Derrick Henry into their offense? Because a lot of times they are in shotgun. But like Hut said, they can go in the pistol, put Derrick Henry behind. They've done that before here with Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
So it can be done. They will find a way to use Derrick Henry in the game. He's going to get the ball more than 16 times on average, and maybe around 20 times. But there may be some times where he gets the ball 35 times, and there'll be some times where he gets the ball like 8 times, depending on what we need him. But we need him for what? The playoffs. So our quarterback doesn't feel like he has to be the end-all, be-all. That's what this is for. It's not for the regular season. It's a benefit, but it's really for the playoffs.
Ben Texan says instead of Henry having to wear the defense down by himself, the Ravens' running game as a whole can do it. But I do think all of his touchdowns will come within the 5-yard line. If so, that's a pretty great weapon that you have in the red zone.
Absolutely.
And touchdowns are touchdowns no matter where they come from. Mm-hmm. So I would agree, yes, that now Derrick Henry doesn't have to do it all by himself.
Derrick Henry doesn't, or neither
Or
does
Lamar
the quarterback.
Jackson.
Yes.
Or Gus Edwards.
Exactly.
Or the Ravens passing game. You at least are multidimensional. But I will go back to, what does Derrick Henry look like when his average touches per game are 15 to 20 rather than 25 to 30? But we'll see.
Yeah.
615-737-1025 is the phone number. Willy Donick will join the show from Winnipeg. The Predators in action taking on the Jets tonight. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, stay tuned into 94.9 The Fan tonight as Vanderbilt men's basketball takes on Arkansas in the SEC men's basketball tournament at Bridgestone Arena. Pre-game at 5:30, tip at 6 with coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and The Game Nashville app. We're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. Coming up in 30 minutes, I'm very excited. Your boy, Ozzie Newsome, will join the show, talk all things Baltimore Ravens.
Absolutely.
What is his official title now in
man,
Baltimore?
I need to.
Still is involved with the team.
Yeah, he's still involved. He still has an office there. I don't know his exact title, but we need to get that. But I'm sure it's some type of consulting. Because he's still in the building every day. He still has an office there. So it'll be good to have him on to, talk about, obviously, the new signing of Derrick Henry. But then, him as a former GM, how does he approach free agency? And then I want to ask him the one question that has been floating around here forever and ever and ever.
Is the cap fake?
Is the cap fake? I will ask him that.
I think that we should.
Exactly.
I think that we absolutely should. Willy Donick joins the show from Winnipeg. Willie D, how we doing?
If you don't ask that, I will, D-Mase, because that question needs to be answered by a GM for sure.
Exactly.
But I am doing well. I'm staying warm up here. 37 degrees officially here in Winnipeg, which is a nice March day.
Summer.
For people here. Yeah.
We laughing at you now, Willie, because remember, Willie, when it was freezing cold here,
and you were
just 70
LA.
Degrees, living it up.
Yeah, I was on the beach. I was talking trash. I was looking at the water.
Willie was doing shows with sunscreen on his nose and his board shorts on.
The tables have turned.
The Arctic tundra of Winnipeg.
Yes.
All right, Willie, I do want to get your thoughts on the Predators matchup tonight, because I do think that there are a couple different ways that you can look at this Predators game tonight. Again, Preds in action taking on the Jets tonight on the road. Puck drop at 6:30. We'll have your pregame coverage here on 1025 and 1063 The Game. Also, Barry Trotz joining Stillman and Company today at 5 p.m. But before we get into the Predators matchup, I did want to touch on some news that came out, and it's really been ramping up over the last few days. And that's the Titans' involvement in the Legarius Sneed sweepstakes. Now, we've been hearing day over day over day that the Titans are hanging around in that conversation. We saw a report yesterday that reportedly the trade that's in conversation is a third-round pick. The Titans don't have a third-round pick. It would be a 2025 third-round pick. But Willie, D-Mase, correct me if you feel differently. If I'm Kansas City, no way. I'm trading Legarius Sneed, who's one of the best cornerbacks in the National Football League, and surely the best cornerback potentially on the market, for a 2025 third.
Well, it's what the market will bear. If it's that, I'm running to the phone to call to make that deal happen. If that's all it takes, I suspect it's going to take a little more. I think the Chiefs will probably wait as long as they can before they decide what they'll do, because I think what you want is a couple of teams jumping in there. You guys have heard me saying this Titans team needs draft picks. They need to make picks. They need to replenish the roster. They don't have the depth and the layers on the roster to win right now. They've got to change that. And a great player like Sneed single-handedly cannot turn this team into a winner. They don't have enough players right now to do that. He would help. So I think you got to be careful what you would give up for him, because he's going to cost I heard Tim Hasselbeck say reset the market. So he's super expensive. He is young enough that he can be a part of your team for a long time, but he's going to take up a big percentage of your cap. So if you're going to get him, you're going to have to pay. And so I think you want to try to hold on to as many assets as you can, because you're going to need those draft picks even more if you're going to spend money on a player like him.
No, you're right, Willie. But I just think that, maybe if indeed you're going to make the move, then maybe he's one of those guys you make the move for, considering that is a need, position of need. So, now how much are you willing to give up? That's a different story. Mm-hmm. But I think you have to at least make a serious push to try to get that player in here, at least on a visit or something. Because if you don't, then, I just think you would have, let a good opportunity, kind of walk by you without even stopping, to see if it was a possibility, or what would it actually take to bring him here.
I'm with Willie. If it's a 2025 third, done deal.
Oh, of course.
And I'm not even letting a second pass. But don't we know better than that? Like, don't we know that trades in the NFL, if there is a trade offer on the board that feels so obvious for one side, like, it's not realistic.
But what if it's this? Kansas City, they know that more than likely, you have Chris Jones, who signed a huge deal. You're going to somehow, some way redo Patrick's contract because you keep kicking things down.
They just
redid his contract.
Yeah, so he'll get $21 million up front.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean like you still owe him money in the future.
But that's just cash.
Yeah.
That's off the books for this season.
So to me, it's do we sign him back along with the other guys that we got to sign back? And listen, they got to sign back guys on that defensive side of the ball too. I mean, the linebacker, he's still working on his first deal, right? Bush? Is it Bush? Who's the linebacker for Kansas City now?
Willie Gay Jr. just signed with the
Saints. So he left.
He left and went to the Saints for a 1-year deal. That was last night.
That was last night. Okay.
Yeah.
So to me, you have other guys that you're going to have to eventually pay. And as long as they got Chris Jones, they probably believe that we could possibly go cheaper at that position and not pay that position what it's worth. Like Ladarius Sneed is worth, probably the money that he wants. But Kansas City's probably looking at it as this. Listen, we got our main guy that we wanted to get signed, and that was Chris Jones. What Chris Jones is able to do, it affects what they're doing in the secondary. He gets to the passer quicker. You don't have to cover longer.
Yeah.
So we don't need a 20-plus or $18 million guy on the outside. So we can trade him. Now, they can't keep him on a tag. I understand that.
Yeah, they already tagged him.
But if the longer you keep him, his value goes down. So if nobody's really offering him offering you a second rounder this year or a first rounder, and there are a team, well, more than likely, then there is a part that says don't trade him.
Yeah.
But what if Kansas City's like, listen, we need to we need to get him somewhere else. We want to allocate that money to other people or other positions. Okay, a third rounder next year. What if they said a second next year, and a third?
I wouldn't take any
or
picks
second and
for
fourth.
next year.
A second next year and a fourth this year. They're fourth this year. Well, you don't have a third, so
you don't have a third.
You would have just your first two picks. You wouldn't do it for a second next year and a fourth this year? I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm just saying
I would
a fourth this year and a second next year.
I would need more insurance now because I'll just have L'Jarius Sneed play on the franchise tag in the next year.
And then next year you lose it for nothing?
Possibly.
You can't. You're not going to get anything for him next year,
or re-sign him next year.
Because he's going to. But you're not going to re-sign him.
Why not?
Because my thing is, if he plays anywhere near what he played this year or play even better,
then
he's
probably
going to
win
want
the Super Bowl again.
He's going to want
worth
more money. But here again, they're not going to pay him. Wow, we won 3 Super Bowls in a row. We can move on from him now and plug somebody else. As long as we got the quarterback. That's all that really matters, right? As long as we got the quarterback, as long as we got our defensive tackle, and we got our tight end, we may get another receiver, hopefully. Then Ladarius Sneed, it's not a position where I'm going to overpay. Why? Because we just won 3 straight. Now we need to we can move on from him now. We can take that money and allocate it to other positions. I'm not saying that they're going to do that, but
I think they've got him for 1 more year at the most.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I suspect, Derek, that you're right, that with the money that they're paying Jones and they're having to move money around with Mahomes and his contract, it's just like any really good team year after year. You have tough choices to make because of the cap, and you really have to decide what's the most important thing. And do you have an alternative plan? Do you have enough defensive backs that you could live without Sneed and then really use that money smartly in other areas. So I think that's what's going to determine how desperate they are to trade him this year, and will they take something very low to trade the contract. So I think they're going to wait it out as long as they can to see if somebody will bite on something more than, say, a third.
Mm-hmm.
I just the multiple picks for the Titans, second and fourth, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but they need a lot of players. I think long and hard. I mean, I don't know everything about this guy, what makes him tick, what's his longevity. But I still look at a guy, they're not one player away, the Titans, not right now. So this has to be a long-term move if you're going to do it. And they need draft picks.
He's young. So I think that would be the idea, is he would be your long-term cornerback of the future. But if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, look, I take the Barry Trotz approach. I say, look, my price is my price because I don't have to move him. That he can play under the tag this season if we don't get what we want in return for him. What they want in return, I don't know. It was reportedly a third-round pick. That feels low to me, but if that's the Chiefs' price, then hey, that's the Chiefs' price. Mm-hmm. But a 2025 third would be much too rich for my blood if I am, in fact, the Kansas City Chiefs. But L'Jarius Sneed would completely change your defense. Completely change
saying it would be
hyperbolic.
too rich if they gave up a third-round pick next year for L'Jarius Sneed. It would be too rich.
That's not enough.
Oh, it's not enough.
I misspoke. Excuse me. That's not a 2025 third. I mean, just think about it if you're the Titans. Let's say, it's hard for me to pull out really good players. The Titans.
With the Titans, it's like,
But if for one of your best players defensively, would you trade that player for a third next year if you didn't have to trade him? I wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't.
But if the Chiefs do it, then great.
Yeah, unless, again, you feel that you're going to lose him next year anyway. So you want to try to get something for him. You feel we're not going to pay him, the money that he wants and that he probably deserves, and we don't want to lose him for nothing. So teams, listen, this is not the first time it would happen in the NFL where teams get to, just like Chicago, they're in a position now where the longer they wait, it's like we're just going to have to take what people give us. We no longer, our price yesterday isn't going to be the price tomorrow. It's going to be lower the longer we hang on to Justin Fields. I see that with L'Jarius Sneed as well. The longer they hold on to L'Jarius Sneed, yes, it will benefit them this year. Next year, he'd just walk. Mm-hmm. Without you even getting the compensation. But if you want to trade him this year, the longer you wait, the less likely you will get top dollar for him. When I mean top dollar, I mean the picks that you want for him.
If I'm the Chiefs, you have to weigh. If that's the offer that you have on the table, what's more valuable to me? Mm-hmm. A 2025 third-round pick or one more year of L'Jarius Sneed on the franchise tag? I say one more year of L'Jarius Sneed on the franchise tag, which would say you're going to have to cough up a little bit more to get L'Jarius Sneed. And I did see a report that the Titans reportedly did say that the first and second this year are off the table, and I think that's the right approach.
Of course.
I'm not trading a first, and I'm not trading a second in this year's draft.
And here's the other thing to consider, and D-Mase, this comes up all the time when you're talking about the franchise tag, because players don't like it. And so I don't know enough about L'Jarius Sneed, the person, to know if this would affect him. But, when you're playing on that tag, you're probably not all that excited about the situation, especially if the team basically says, we got you here for one more year. Mm-hmm. Like some guys have handled that fine and some guys don't. And, you start talking about holdouts and things like that. I don't know if that's in the cards, but I don't know if it's just as simple as, we'll just keep him for one more year on the tag, because there can be some potential issues with that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I agree with you. But listen, Kansas City has to find out, have to figure out, listen, is it better to keep him this 1 year and more than likely lose him next year? Or do we get draft picks, not necessarily for this year, but for next year? We can get somebody to give us their second or their third next year, or their second and fourth, or their third and fourth next year. Is that better for us in the long run? it may be better for them in the long run because listen,
But if I'm Kansas City, I'm not worried about the long run.
No.
I'm worried about winning another Super Bowl because I can do that this year.
But they're not going to. They will still be in a position to win a Super Bowl without a Ladarius Sneed. They will be. They have another corner on their roster that's damn good too. That's pretty good too. So Ladarius Sneed, he's at top of that mountain as far as their corner, but they have another really good cornerback on that roster. To me, it's okay. Do we hold on to him or do we get something for him now? Because Kansas City, we figure it's always going to be drafted at the bottom of the first round because of who they are and how far we predict they will go each and every year, at least for the next 2 or 3 years. So
We'll be picking in the 30s.
Yeah, so why not pick up a third and a fourth or second next year, knowing that we're going to be picking dead last more than likely in the draft in the first round, which more than likely equals to a second round pick. Why not pick up more draft capital next year? Because we're not going to get it this year. Why not pick up more draft capital next year? And now we can move on from this player that's been good for us, but we're not going to pay him what he wants in the long run.
If you think L'Jarius Sneed is more valuable than a second-round pick.
And I think that's an important question is, like, let's say with hockey, right now you've got a team like Tampa, a team like Colorado that are in the window, and they're basically saying we're going year to year, and every year we're pushing all our chips to the table. We'll trade any future draft pick that we've got to do it, and we'll deal with the consequences down the road. There's several teams that are taking that approach right now, and they're being lauded for their aggressiveness. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is going to age and be over the hill in 1 or 2 years, right? So I think you're Kansas City, you're like, I want to be in it every year if I can. And so I've got to make some calculated moves. If I give up – and I think the Patriots did it brilliantly, right, with Brady and sustained it. They have a lot of times where you kind of raise your eyebrows and say, "Oh, they're getting rid of Lawyer Malloy, or they're moving on from Richard Seymour." You know, there's some key guys that they said, "Okay, let's move this guy now. We can survive without him because we've got Brady, and we'll take the return." I think that's kind of how you got to look at it if you're the Chiefs, right? Because Patrick Mahomes is not 35 or 36 years old.
No, you're right.
I'm just saying, if I'm Kansas City, I wouldn't do it. But I think that the Titans are doing the right thing in having those conversations. If I'm Kansas City, I wouldn't do it next year's third. If I'm the Titans, I don't trade a first or a second this year. And I probably don't – I definitely don't trade a first next year and probably not a second next year.
What
I don't see
you
the
could
path
say,
for L'Jarius Sneed as a Titan.
Well, I'll throw the same thing I did out there when we discussed T. Higgins. If you waited for 1 year and you say to yourself, okay, maybe somebody pulls the trigger and pays a big price for Sneed, okay, then we're out of the game. We missed our chance. But is there a chance that he hits the market and it's just straight cash? You pay the guy in a year where you got a better idea of where your team is after another season, and then you don't have to give up any draft picks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you would still have to address corner now.
I mean, you do, but obviously you do. But I'm under the – if I'm Rand Carthon, I know I can't fix all the holes in 1 year. And I'm going to fix what I can, and I'm not going to blow my budget in 1 year. I want to have good cap flexibility over the next couple of years as I see where the holes are. I'm hoping that some other guys who are cheap, draft picks, etc., maybe some players
like
who
City
have been
Charles
on the team. Well, I mean, cheap free agents, draft picks, guys you pull off the street, guys who you're developing on your own with the new staff here. Maybe Chig takes a step forward. And then there are guys – so you got a budget for those guys if they are ready to make more money. So there's a lot of things you have to think of, when you're trying to build a roster from the bottom, which is they're close to the bottom right now.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Coming up next, I'm really excited. Former Baltimore Ravens general manager and now executive vice president of player personnel, Ozzie Newsome, will join us coming up next. We'll get his perspective of Derrick Henry heading to Baltimore, plus his GM perspective. Ben. They have a lot of positions of need. We're in the thick of free agency. I want to get his thoughts, and we will chat with Ozzie Newsome coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Okay, time to tell you about Lee Company. Very excited to talk to Ozzie Newsome, NFL legend and tremendous front office superstar for the Baltimore Ravens. This is going to be awesome. Also, the Predators have a huge game tonight against the Winnipeg Jets, one of the true heavyweight contenders in the league right now, division rivalry. This will be a great test for Nashville. And our coverage, as always, is brought to you by Lee Company. Lee Company has done such a great job for our household back in Nashville over the years with the home maintenance plan. We have the great system with Lee Company where they're going to come out and check our air conditioning unit every year before the weather gets hot. The same as in the fall when they check the heating system before the weather gets really cold for all those months, and you're really relying on that heating system. Plus, they'll check the plumbing, they'll check the electrical, and it's a really good deal. And over time, and we've had this system now for several years, if you need repairs, you get discounts on those repairs. It's a great system and is going to save you money over the long term. Lee Company. Just go online at leecompany.com to check out the details and all the other services they have, or just give them a call, 615-567-1000. That's 615-567-1000 for Lee Company.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game and The Game Nashville app. Derrick Henry is officially a Baltimore Raven, and I know that those words just sting as they hit your ears. I get it. I understand. But we also are in the thick of free agency. Several moves coming down the pipe here. Mike Williams has been released by the LA Chargers. So Mike Williams, wide receiver, is now officially a free agent. The Titans have made some moves. Still several moves left to be made. And joining us now to break down things, all things Baltimore and all things GMing, is former Baltimore GM and now Executive Vice President of Player Personnel, Ozzie Newsome. Ozzie, really appreciate your time. I'm glad we could get you on with D-Mase here. A little reunion from the Baltimore Raven days.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to enjoying the opportunity to talk with Derrick and the rest of you all.
Now, Ozzie, obviously, people know about your playing career, but your GM career has been as good, even better. What has made that transition for you from a player to a GM work? And how do you, as a former GM, how do you sort of attack free agency since we're in the free agency period now?
Well, it all began when my last year in the league, when I was asked by Mr. Modell if I wanted to stay within the organization. And I did, and I told him I wanted to stay on the football side. But the year I retired is the year that they hired Bill Belichick. And so having the opportunity to work with Bill for 5 years when I was just learning the business, I don't think you can put any measure on that. Watching where he conducted meetings on the coaching side, and then watching the way he conducted the meetings in the draft room and so forth. So he gave me a great foundation about life after football in either coaching or personnel. And then once we made the decision, Mr. Modell made the decision to move from Cleveland to Baltimore, I was asked to move with the team, and he asked me would I become the head of player personnel. And I accepted that position. And the thing that really helped me is all of the guys that I had worked with, I knew their strengths and weaknesses, the other scouts. And we just, rolled up our sleeves and, got a little dirty and went to work.
Now, with that being said, how do you approach free agency, or how did you approach free agency? Because now here in Nashville with Rand Carthon having his second year as GM, there are a lot of Titan fans that are screaming and yelling, he's not doing enough, he's not doing enough. You have this huge budget, for free agency, but you're not attacking it sort of the way that other teams are. Looking at the Houston Texans and what they're doing within the division. And I'm trying to tell, everyone, hey, listen, be patient. Allow him to build this team, not necessarily for the now, but for the future as well.
Oh, you're right. We don't play games till September. And you don't lose or win games in March or April. You lose them from September to January. So, there's a lot of ways to build a team. For years we didn't have any cap room ourselves, and so we basically had to build through the draft. And I think that's what most teams will do. At that point, you're able to, utilize your draft resources. You get a guy for 4 years, at the minimum that they have to play. So I think that's the best way to build a football team, and then you augment that with free agents, like as we did with yourself, with Samari Rowe, with Steve McNair. I guess that's a bunch of Titans that I'm talking about, and now with Derrick. You augment your team, but you build it through the draft, and so. Everybody that are making headlines over Monday, Tuesday, today, the rest of this week, that don't necessarily mean those teams are going to be the ones that's going to be playing in late January.
talking with former Ravens general manager and now executive vice president Ozzie Newsome in the Baltimore Ravens. You bring up Derrick Henry. I know so many Titans fans are so sad to see him go. I mean, he's been a legend in Nashville. Can you walk us through the process of getting that deal done, kind of the Ravens' perspective of what Derrick Henry brings to that offense, augmenting that strong Ravens run game?
Well, having served on the competition committee for over 20 years, I can't touch that question because it's not 4 o'clock and he hadn't signed any deal and he's still a Tennessee Titan.
We'll call back in a few hours.
Exactly.
So I cannot talk about that as of right now. Derrick is a Tennessee Titan, and I respect all of the rules.
Absolutely. Completely understand. The Titans coming into their second year with Will Levis, and it feels like this offseason everything is dedicated to what can we do to help the young quarterback, bringing in Brian Callahan, who has a proven track record of working with young quarterbacks and even veteran quarterbacks. I believe that will be the approach in free agency and the draft as well. From your perspective, what are the most important factors for building around young quarterbacks?
I think you start with the offensive line. You got to be able to protect the quarterback, and you got to have the ability that he can hand the ball off and have a running game. And if you get those, and then you can add the other pieces on the outside or a tight end. But you have to start within the offensive line. Get you a good, strong offensive line, a bunch of smart guys that understand schemes and understand different front coverages and blitzes. And you get that solid so that the quarterback is not under duress. And then you go from there.
We're talking to NFL Hall of Famer Ozzie Newsome, now the executive VP for the Baltimore Ravens. Ozzie, it's such a pleasure to get to talk to you. I was looking over some of your numbers because I can go back as a kid. I remember watching you a lot. And I want to ask you about your time at Alabama because, as you know, the college game evolves. And when you were playing tight end at Alabama, they were under Bear Bryant. They're running the wishbone. You guys won a ton of games. But you had to get used to just catching the ball maybe 2 or 3 times in a game. You had huge yards per catch. And obviously the pro scouts saw what they needed to see. But how much of an adjustment was it for you to go from that type of offense to a pro offense basically overnight? Because you made an immediate impact for the Browns.
Well, I think, playing in the wishbone, people were, destined to try to stop the run, try to stop the triple option. So it allowed me the ability to work one-on-one and to learn how to become a crafty receiver, beating one-on-one coverages. And then when they started to realize I was having some success, then they would double. So then now I learned how to beat the double. So I think playing in the wishbone, even though I didn't have a lot of numbers, but it really allowed me the opportunity to, number one, learn how to beat one-on-one coverage, but also learn how to be able to dissect coverages and find my ways to soft spots so that I could be effective in the pass game.
You had to be unselfish, too, I'm sure. I can't imagine Derek Mason getting the ball 2 or 3 times a week and not saying a few things. But it probably wasn't easy to go to Coach Bryant and give you the ball.
I've lived that, so I know what that looks like,
What do you think was the biggest thing that you learned?
When you just walk away from Derek.
Ozzie, what do you think you took away most? I'm sure you've been asked this question dozens of times over your lifetime, but what was the biggest takeaway from playing for a legend like Bear Bryant?
Well, I spoke to a group last week, and I think I summed it up this way. I went to the University of Alabama because of Coach Bryant, but also because the opportunity to win. I mean, they had a very successful program. But I think what I came away with is that the lessons that he was teaching us as young men is how to become good fathers, be good family men, to become very involved in your community and understand the importance of that. But and also just to have an appreciation of the game of football. And we always talked about change, and change happened in life. And you got to be able to adapt to change. And he taught us how, it could be this way one day and be totally something different the next day, and you got to be able to adjust. So I think playing for him, gaining that foundation of his leadership really propelled me to where I am right now.
I got one more before I throw it back to D-Mase for the last couple of questions here. And, you just mentioned how important it is to surround a good young quarterback with a good offensive line. I hear so much today, and we watched the college game. It's totally different from when you were playing. The spread offenses, and they say a lot, it's hard to sometimes evaluate offensive linemen because the game is so different in the pro game. So how do you try to adjust, as a talent evaluator, how do you try to evaluate offensive linemen in today's college game?
You look for the athlete. You still can judge an athlete even in today's game. You can watch how a guy bend, his ability to change direction, and his ability to, move down the field. You can watch how he work his feet because he's in pass protection probably 60-70% of the time. So there are certain traits that you can look for that, still translate into, this guy's going to be a real good athlete. They're coming out so much bigger now, so you get a big athlete, and you realize if they have the intellect, then to be able to pick up different schemes and fronts and so forth, as I talked about before, then you can sit there and evaluate an offensive lineman and come away with a good evaluation.
We'll talk with Ozzie Newsome, Baltimore Ravens executive vice president. Now, Ozzie, what would you say to those that are claiming that the cap is fake, that look at what these teams are doing supposedly with no money, Kansas City and all these other teams, the Rams, they're doing this without any money, but there's a cap there, but it seems like these guys are spending over the cap, so it really doesn't pertain to them. What do you say to those that say, well, the cap's really fake?
It's like a credit card. You go out and spend money on that credit card at some point. You're gonna have to pay that bill, and there are ways that you can manipulate it. But as even those teams that you've talked about and other teams, at some point they have to go through a total redevelopment of their football team because they got so much money just pushed out into the future that eventually you get to those years and it sucks up the cap, that space that you would have. So you got to reshuffle your deck. So the cap is real. The cap is real. It's a hard cap, and every dollar under the cap that you use, it counts. It may not count today, but it will count at some point. So it really has made this league a very competitive league.
And quickly, before I know Carolina has one more question for you, what are your thoughts on Rand Carthon? Because when he came in here last year, he just sort of walked into a situation, and it seems like he was deferring more to everyone else because he's a new GM. But it seems like this year they gave him more titles, and it seems like he's more immersed into what this team can ultimately be, not just today but in the future. But what is the consensus of Rand Carthon as a GM?
Well, I can only give you my perspective, and watching Rand, even when he was at San Francisco, I think, he's a very knowledgeable guy. He's got unbelievable work ethic, and I think he's able to put good people around him to help him to be a success. And those are the things that I've noticed about him, and I think those are the things that's going to allow him to be a very successful GM, even though he's in the AFC. And I don't root for AFC GMs, but for those reasons, I think he will do a great job. And I think he has a very good young quarterback to start off with.
Last one for you, Ozzie. Denard Wilson. I know he spent just a short period of time in Baltimore, but he comes into Nashville as the Titans' next defensive coordinator. Now, I'm excited. I know a lot of Titans fans are excited about what they've heard from Denard Wilson, but just from your perspective, what are Titans fans getting in the new defensive coordinator?
A great hire. We had Denard here for a year. I got to spend a lot of time around him, with him. Number one, he's a great teacher. He has an unbelievable background in football, in understanding schemes and different things like that. I think he has a presence, and when he stands in front of the group and delivers, and he don't mind chewing a little ass also. So I think,
That is great to hear.
I think that was a great hire, and I'm really happy for him. As I said, I got the only chance to spend a year with him, but he is a man that has a bright future in the National Football League.
Well, that's great to hear, because we sure enough need it here in Nashville as this team, is being built by Rand and the coaching staff over there at the Titans facility. But again, thank you, Ozzie, for coming on. We do appreciate it. I enjoyed my time there. Thank you for signing me there. I enjoyed my time once again, and I will always think of you. You and Floyd are the two greatest GMs that I know, because you've done such a wonderful job. Floyd did a wonderful job here before his passing, and you have continued to do a wonderful job there in Baltimore.
And I could say I had a lot of respect for Floyd Reese myself. I think it was Floyd and I that made the trade for Steve McNair. I think that's who made the trade with me. But I will say this for your listeners in Nashville. I grew up in Muscle Shoals, which is maybe 2 hours from there. And my mother really wanted me to go to Vanderbilt because she didn't think I was a very good football player.
Well, Vanderbilt would have loved you. Lost
You're
out.
breaking my heart, Ozzie. You're breaking my heart. I'm a Commodore. What might have been? What might have been?
Well, Ozzie, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to speak with you today. Really, really appreciate your time. I promise we'll take care of Derek Mason here if you take care of Derrick Henry there in Baltimore.
We will in roll tide.
There you go. You're talking to an LSU grad.
I just said so many nice things.
Okay.
Now, picking on Willy.
Well, like I said, y'all understand how football is down south. It's 12 months out of the year,
365 days a year, absolutely. Ozzie, thank you for your time. We'll catch up soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
I appreciate it. Ozzie Newsome, an absolute legend. D-Mase, appreciate for getting him on. He's wonderful. All right, we'll react to what we had to hear from Ozzie Newsome there, and we'll do that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Tune into 93.3 Classic Hits tonight as MTSU basketball takes on Louisiana Tech in the Conference USA men's basketball tournament. Pre-game at 7:30, tip-off at 8, with coverage also available on 93.3 Classic Hits app and at 933classichits.com. Quickly, Ozzie Newsome, an absolute legend. What'd you take away, D-Mase?
One, that the cap is real. It's a credit card. You got to pay that bill.
Are you listening?
Yeah,
Are you listening?
It is real.
You know
you
who
got to
you
pay
are.
that bill. Some teams try to push it out, but eventually, collector comes knocking on your door.
Can we all agree?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't cap spending.
No, but you got to end up.
spend as much money
but you got to
as
end
you
up.
want.
You got to end up paying for it. Eventually, you got to pay for it, and that's what I got from him. And then also, for those that are saying, Rand, you need to go out there. The former GM, one of the best GMs ever, told you, listen, this is how we built the team. Through the draft and augmented through free agency. That's how we did it.
And, most important thing for a young quarterback,
Yeah,
offensive line.
absolutely. He ain't say a speedy
heard
wide
that loud and
receiver,
clear.
did he?
Well, I would like a speedy
Oh, I
wide
still
receiver.
would like one.
I would still, yeah, I'm never going to say
Yeah.
no to a speedy wide receiver. But Andre Dillard, no thanks.
Nah.
All right, Willie, have a great call tonight. Predators in action, puck drop at 6:30 p.m. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman and Company is up next.
Be love and loving your people. Peace.
But you can't stay here.